get wired for sound here. I'm a stationary speaker, so this will work. First of all, I want to say to you, happy 2nd anniversary, birthday, and what you've done here in Payson as a group is wonderful. I'm very proud of you all. And I want to thank you for the opportunity to be here. This is a season of gratitude. And I'm grateful for this opportunity to be here with all of you. Rev Billie has told me how wonderful you all are. She's been working with you visioning. You know, she loves to mentor, and she's very good at it. So she has enjoyed her time as I am today. So thank you. Now, if you'll get quiet and join me in meditation. Get comfortable in your chair and gently close your eyes to shut out the worldly cares. Go now to that quiet place inside where there's just you and spirit. Hear the gentle beating of your heart and feel the ebb and flow of your breath. All fears subside in that soft stillness at the center, where wholeness and holiness abide. Into that blessed silence comes the voice of truth. And when you listen, really listen, today's confusion lifts like mist, and the voice of Spirit speaks. Their Spirit has always been. There in the secret place of your heart are answers to everything you need to know. Within your own being is a peace not quite forgotten. So listen deeply now and hear the rising and the falling of your breath. And let any limits of your body fall away. Be in this quiet place for just a moment. Spirit within you speaks. Dear one, I give you strength and joy and guidance and truth. The truth that God indwelling works through the human vessel. Never doubt that I walk with you on your daily path. I am there to bless you in joy, to comfort you in sorrow. Accept this gift, and truly, the journey will be full as we walk together. Now, feeling the love in these words of Spirit, be open to receive and remember to listen, listen, listen to the indwelling Spirit as you go about your days. And now, in the spirit of that love, when you feel comfortable, open your eyes and come back into this room. If you are or have ever been a Mark Twain fan, you might recall that scene in Huck Finn where those two scoundrels, Duke and Dauphine, got tarred and feathered. They were getting their comeuppance after abusing Huck Finn. They had exploited, ridiculed, humiliated, and mocked him. But as he watched them being tarred and feathered and railroaded out of town, he had mixed feelings. Instead of feeling good, his conscience kicks in. Mark Twain was a student of conscience in the 19th century American life, and he puts these thoughts into Huck's head. I knowed it was the night, it was the king and duke, and though they was covered all over with tars and feathers and didn't look like nothing in the world human, just like a couple of big monstrous soldier plumes, well, it made me sick to see it. And I was sorry for them poor pitiful rascals. It seemed like I couldn't ever feel hardness against them anymore in the world. It was a dreadful thing to see. Human beings can be awful cruel to one another. So we poked along back home. I weren't feeling so brash as I was before, but I was feeling kind of ornery and humble and sort of to blame somehow, but I hadn't done nothing. But that's always the way. Don't matter if you're wrong or right. A person's conscience ain't got no sense. If I had a yeller dog that didn't have no more sense than a person's conscience, I'd poison him. A conscience takes up more room than all the rest of a person's insides, and yet it ain't no good, no how. Tom Sawyer, he says the same. Well, I know just how Huck felt, because I've had times I sure wanted to get even. Maybe you have too. But I knew I shouldn't, and when life, universal law, took care of it, as it always does, I somehow felt responsible. Maybe it was remembering those human thoughts I knew were wrong. And just like Huck Finn, it seems like I never could really find any joy in it. I've thought a lot about that little inner voice that has so much power in our lives, the conscience. What is a conscience anyway? It's been defined by many through the ages. Webster defined it as to be conscious of guilt, the sense or conscious of moral goodness or blame, worthiness of one's own conduct, intentions, or character, together with a feeling of obligation to do right or be good, a sensitive regard for fairness or justice. Milton saw it as an umpire. Aquinas, the pedagogue of the soul, Locke as simply our own opinion in moral matters. Byron called it the oracle of God. Socrates saw it as negatively and said it was as a nagging wife from which you could never get a divorce. Berkeley saw it positively as the seat and the throne of God in the human mind. And our co-founder, Charles Fillmore, said, to each individual, all down the ages has come the still small voice of spirit. The Holy Spirit is God in action within you. Well, some reduce it to a mere superego or an echo of social mores. The word conscience is a direct translation of the Latin con science, with knowing. It is mentioned in both the Old and New Testaments of the Bible in several books. And in 1 Corinthians, which is one of my favorites, and Paula was acknowledged as the author of this book by many theologians. His references revolve around the theme of problems in the Christian church. Many problems of that day are still with us. Immaturity, instability, divisions, jealousy, envy, lawsuits, marital difficulties, sexual immoralities, and misuse of spiritual gifts. They're all mentioned in that chapter. But in spite of the concentration on the problems, this book contains some of the most familiar and beloved chapters in the entire Bible. It speaks to conscience as knowing what is right and not doing it, giving many different excuses why we don't. The subject is addressed from the book of Genesis, through the book of Peter, almost from the beginning to the end of the Bible. So we know that it's very important. It's written about in relation to living in truth and in matters of personal character. Each person's internal knowing of right and wrong. There is a divine goodness at the root of all existence. It isn't necessary to know the location of this goodness. And no one is so lowly, but at the touch of its secret spring, it may be brought to light. This goodness sleeps in the recesses of every mind, and it comes forth when least expected, and sometimes when least wanted. Many try to stifle it, but it eventually comes out. This is the equilibrium of being. It can't be put aside with philosophies or denials any more than it can be smothered by the forces of blind passions. Whoever has felt the sting of conscience, anybody here, has been spoken to by the Holy Spirit. Whoever has sat at the feet of their own inner convictions has been aware of God's presence. We all have it, but sometimes it only works, as someone said, to warn you when somebody may be looking. Sometimes we resist doing something right or wrong because we don't want the disapproval of someone else. Well, Mark Twain understood conscience has everything to do with honesty and truth. And he once told a story in a speech he gave. He said, "When I was a boy, I was walking down the street and I happened to spy a cart full of watermelons. I was very fond of watermelons. So I sneaked quietly up to the cart and snitched one. And then I ran into a nearby alley and sank my teeth into that melon. And no sooner had I done so than a strange feeling came over me. Without a moment's hesitation, I made my decision. I walked back to the cart, replaced that melon on the cart, and took a right over. So he set his conscience aside. Well, for sure, it's an ethical compass, that little voice inside, that helps us live in truth and honesty. When we listen, it's the one thing we can count on to keep us on the straight and narrow, the right track. A man visited a psychiatrist and explained, "I've been doing a lot of wrong things, and it's been bothering me a lot." So the doctor asked, "So you want me to help you make your willpower stronger?" Well, he thought about it for a few minutes and he said, "Well, I'd really rather help you weaken my conscience." I felt that way many times, and maybe you have too. I remember reading of a sea tragedy some years ago. Between the coast of Wales and Ireland, a ship ran aground one night, running full speed ahead with loss of life and the complete wrecking of the ship. It wasn't pilot error, as first thought. What investigators found was that someone seeking to clean around the compass had slipped a very thin knife blade into the compass box near the needle, and the little blade, just a little tiny piece of that blade, the corner, had broken off. That tiny piece of metal was sufficient enough degrees to change their course and send the ship onto the rocks. It seems to me that the world has changed, of course, I'm very old, so that's why it seems like it's changed, because indeed it has. But we live busy lives now. All of us do, whether retired or not. I don't know about you, but I've been retired now for some time, and I don't have one day on my calendar that's like just blank. It's always busy, and that's a good thing. But we live in a world now where everything goes. So we must be very careful that little things don't slip into our lives that might deflect the needle of our conscience and lead us off the course of principle. Recently I counseled with a couple. One had been unfaithful and the marriage had gone aground. The guilty party said the first few times it was really hard and felt guilty, but each time it became easier. And that's the way it works. The needle of the compass had become so bent it was easy to drift off course. It's that way when we step aside from principle and truth. The little blades of cheating, lying, and dishonesty, and even turning away from right, can throw us off our course. The Chinese define conscience as a triangle, and they say that it turns within you every time you do wrong. So in the beginning, the sharp points hurt, but as time goes on, the points wear down, and pretty soon you don't feel the triangle at all. The points are totally worn off if you don't tend to them. Well, conscience isn't something to listen to once in a while. It takes on a personality. Imagine that your conscience can take on a personality, but it does. And it can lead you, it can reveal, comfort, and help us evolve in our own spiritual nature. And then, as the master teacher Jesus, if we really work and listen to our conscience, we can learn to live in the world and not be of it. Jiminy Cricket kept Pinocchio's conscience, but we must keep our own. We have all the answers deep inside where Spirit speaks to us. Every one of us, Spirit's within you. You are a spiritual being. You're divine. So you must listen and follow that guidance. So stand strong and firm in honesty and truth, moving always in a positive direction. And remember to listen, listen, listen to the inner voice, your conscience.